5:30, so if everybody wants to begin, or do we want to wait a couple minutes for Laura? Is she coming, or should we just begin?
Yeah, we should begin. She did say she was coming, but not sure what's going on.
Okay. I hope everybody enjoyed the holidays, and we're healthy. So let's call this to order. We have the minutes from October and November to be approved. Before we do that, Tony, do we have quorum at the moment?
We do. We have, let me see, you, Leslie, Patty, and let me make sure Todd. Todd? He signed on. I don't know if he could hear us. I just unmuted him. Todd?
Uh,
Well, we don't have quorum until we could hear Todd. Maybe he just stepped away for a moment.
Okay, perhaps we can go back to line item number 2 then, when we do have quorum, to just vote on the minutes and the approval. Next would be the liaison updates. I don't believe Robert Clee is here. So, Tim, would you like to give an update? Hello?
Sure. I actually have a few items tonight. Let me pause after the first one for questions. And Sheila, you were on the last apparently on the last Conservation Commission, so I apologize for the repetition for you. The first item is around the Merritt Avenue subdivision. For those of you who don't know, that's the properties are between the Merritt Parkway and Merritt Avenue, diagonally across from Starbucks, behind the gas station there. It's a pretty small piece of property, and there's a proposal to put in 14 two-unit dwellings. Of interest to the Conservation Commission is obtaining, as the planning and zoning regs suggest that the planning and zoning can request, is the set aside for open space. It's an interesting piece of property to obtain open space for us, because for a particular reason, and that's the West River runs through it. And the West River Greenway, there is a trail, of course, that is being constructed in New Haven. And we have parts of a trail that are up by the Darling House, and it'd be another little segment along the way that, if we obtain open space, we could look at continuing the trail. We need lots of other pieces, of course, but so the Conservation Commission is working cooperatively right now with the developer and with the civil engineer with the developer, and they seem willing to consider the open space. The matters right now before inland wetlands, and they will be holding a hearing in inland wetlands, and then the matter will go to the town planning and zoning. The Conservation Commission visited the site last Saturday. It was very well attended by the neighbors. The neighbors have a lot of concerns. They raised a lot of concerns. A lot of them, of course, the Conservation Commission can't address. Hopefully, they'll get their density and parking concerns addressed as it goes through the process. But if it does go forward, we hope to get the set aside in this land, and it comes to the point of why this might be of interest to you. As Cupop, this land will then go to the town and become another piece of publicly owned property. That's one method of obtaining the open space. Right now, the developer, again, the civil engineer for the developer, seems open to that arrangement or some type of easement. I think my personal preference right now is for the set aside is to have a fee simple arrangement, so that we would the town would obtain ownership. Any questions on that? I'll try to answer. Okay.
Tim, if I could just ask, I just want to make sure I understand. The land that you're speaking of, so the developer is in agreement to the possibility, I guess I should say, of keeping it open space, or are they leaning
Well,
more
no,
towards, at the very least, an easement
it's
to
a,
any development?
yeah, I probably should have tried to be clear on that. The developer wants to develop the
Right.
14 two-unit dwellings. They
Yeah.
have a plan that has those specified.
Mhm.
They did not originally put in any set aside for open space. The planning and zoning regulations um, say that the planning and zoning board can require, and I think the figure used is 10% of the land to be open space. And there's some other things that have to be done in terms of what type of land it is. It can't all be the worst land. It has to be representative land of the development. And so I think as Chris Sullivan actually made us aware that the subdivision had been submitted to inland wetlands. We contacted the developer through the civil engineer, and uh, they said they're willing to make an open space provision if it's reasonable. So the civil engineer was there with us on Saturday. We walked around as a conservation commission trying to figure out what the ask would be. And we're going to wait until the inland wetlands, they have a report coming back from a consultant about the wetland areas, updating that. And sometimes they will preserve that due to the nature of the wetlands, and so we don't want to necessarily ask for those. But we will probably most likely ask for the land a little along the river and perhaps a small piece of it right up in the corner by the Merritt Parkway. Um, that's to be seen, but it will end up, something probably less than 10% of the parcel, which I think it might be a 3.5 acre parcel. It's not a great amount of land, but it's a nice little strip along the river that's all wooded right now, and could provide a little a place for the neighborhood, even to you put a couple park benches across along the river, a nice spot to sit, access for fishing. They were talking about alewife with the dam removal down at Pond Lily. The alewife have been coming upstream, and so want to try to preserve that piece of it for the neighborhood, as well as I mentioned, connecting the West River Greenway trails from New Haven up into Woodbridge for people who like to walk.
Great, thanks, Tim.
The second item began as I think, a reaction. Some of you may have noticed and this happened, I'm going to say 6 months ago, maybe longer, maybe shorter, that there was a development on Peck Hill Road where the trees were clear cut to begin the development. And so there's become interest on the part of the Conservation Commission in looking at whether there's a way to prevent that type of clear cutting during development. There's apparently a couple other towns in the state that have done that. And we're at the very beginning of our process. We're going to look at what they've done and then try to recommend to the Board of Selectmen something appropriate. The Board of Selectmen will then turn around and whether if it needs to be an ordinance, it'll go ordinance committee or whichever direction it needs to go, maybe TPZ, depending what it is. We're not even sure of our scope right now. Whether what we would recommend would apply only to developments, properties under development, or subdivision developments, or whether I've seen an example where even private property, the first however many feet it is, that's don't know the technical language for it, but the town has some rights on that first part of land that maybe the protection applies to that. And maybe the protection applies to even town land when work is being done. So in the aspect of it being perhaps us talking about town land, I wanted to mention it and bring it up to everyone tonight. The third item is I mentioned talking about Merritt Avenue, that the West River Greenway. The town of Woodbridge also has a greenway. It was state recognized in 2002, which makes this the 20th anniversary. And for the 20th anniversary, we hope that on the Conservation Commission, we're going to revisit the documentation of the Greenway. It is somewhat out of date. Properties have changed, been acquired, developments have been done, and we'd like to update that plan. And that Greenway runs through land trust property, Woodbridge Park Association property, and town property. And in the update, we can see that there are places, there are extensions that would make sense to the Greenway. And that's been an objective of the Conservation Commission that we said at the beginning of last year, that we were going to look at extensions to the Greenway, but also preservation along the Greenway and access to the Greenway. Much of the Greenway is covered with a trail in somewhat of a circular route. So we'll be looking to update that document as we go through 2022. Again, affecting town lands perhaps. And that's it. Any questions on those?
Any questions, anyone? Thank you, Tim. That seems
You're
like a lot that you did have to report today for your. That's
I
a
was
lot.
trying to procrastinate so you get quorum here.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Hi, Sheila.
Hi there. So Tim, I just want to reflect for a moment. You're giving me a strong sense of nostalgia. When I first moved to town in 1997, one of the first things I did was go on the Greenway Trail walk, and we have all these little buttons that were given out that day. I walked the Woodbridge Greenway Trail.
Right.
I'll dig one up and let you see a copy of, because
I'll come back to this at another meeting. I don't want to get deep into it because I think I'll have a little more information later. But we have one of our members. This came up last year. We're trying to revive. COVID sort of dampened it, and we're trying to revive it for this year. A trail challenge where there are going to be buttons given out, which is
there you go.
The deja vu all over again. It may be coming back. Do you still have yours, Sheila?
I do. I have.
Do you really?
Everyone in my family got one, so I probably have 5. So
I may want you to take a picture and send it to me.
Absolutely, I'd be happy to do it.
Okay,
very fond memories. So then the other thing I was going to mention to you is with regard to trees. I do remember when I served on Cupop and when Jason was chair of conservation, I think it was probably 2014 that conservation met jointly with Cupop. There were several meetings, and there was definitely some discussion about recommendations to the town regarding tree trimming. This is when the UI was coming and just clear cutting down big roads. There's a whole document about recommendations. I think it went to the Board of Selectmen. It definitely got out of conservation. I know that. So maybe it's one of those things that someone could do some research for you. So
Jason had sent me some files, and I will certainly dig through that. Okay. This was, I think, in starting off, as I said, we're at the beginning. The intent was not so much around the tree trimming, which with what's been done over even the past few years, not even going back to 2014. I know there's been a lot of concern about what the UI was doing. This was more the clear cutting when people, are going to put up a house and preserving some of the woods and that feel for the properties.
Yeah,
So,
I know there was some discussion also at ordinance maybe 3 years ago regarding blight and whether trees that had been taken down or had fallen down and were still on people's front
on the
lawns,
ground.
whether the town had any ability to ask people to clean that up. So whether you're cleaning up trees that have fallen or you're taking down trees, I think that the ability of the town to tell people what to do with their private property is pretty limited, but I heard you say that you're going to come to the Board of Selectmen to discuss it, so we
Oh,
could probably
yeah,
look
well,
into
I think it'll be more of a, an ask, a recommendation, say we suggest that we look at implementing something like this, and try to have language around and have explored some of those issues, unless you think there's feedback
Yeah,
that people want to give us
well,
ahead of time.
I know later in this agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about, well, recommendations that go to the Board of Selectmen and then have to either go to ordinance, or if the Board of Selectmen declines to send them to ordinance, the commission sending the recommendation has spent a lot of time and effort, and if they find out that it's not going anywhere, it's frustrating.
That's
So
for sure.
I
Yes,
don't have an opinion about this. It's the process that we
yes,
can maybe
yes.
figure out. So for my liaison report from the Board of Selectmen, we did have our meeting in January. Looks like Laura is joining us now, which is great because I'm going to refer to a couple of things that she'll probably fondly remember. So one of the things we did at our last Board of Selectmen meeting was we received a presentation about a program called Pay As You Throw, which has to do with our transfer station and the rules that we have around the use of the transfer station, right? So as you may remember, I think I mentioned in a previous liaison report, the Board of Selectmen has already taken action to change the way you are able to dispose of bulk waste. Bulk waste is not household waste. It's not your garbage. It is when you're doing demolition or you've got like big items that need to be thrown in a different bin. It's actually that first bin when you come into the transfer station. We had been charging by cubic yard. Now we're going to be charging by pound. People will have to go up on the scale, whether it's your contractor who's bringing demolition from your house or it's you that have something that has to go into that container. All of this is ways in which the town needs to figure out how we're paying to dispose of things because those costs are going up, and we don't want to lay them on everyone in the town with just a tax increase when there's use programs that will help us sort of target people who are using it. You're going to pay a little bit more, but that way everybody else's costs aren't going up. So in a similar fashion, Pay As You Throw is a program that's been done several different places with great success. We are looking into doing a pilot to see how it goes. We are not, Board of Selectmen has not made any decisions about it. In fact, this was, an informational session. We asked some questions. A recommendation will come to us at a future meeting before we even set up the pilot program. So there are some grants that are being explored. There's some great work being done there, but it's one of those sort of it's a sustainability initiative, but it's also kind of the cost associated with running our transfer station, which is of course on publicly owned property. So I let Cupop know about that. And then a couple of other things that happened at our Board of Selectmen meeting. We had some requests from the Agricultural Commission. One was just a simple, could you please waive the fee so we can go to TPZ to make the case that we would like a regulation change to allow farm stands in town to be able to sell items that are not necessarily produced on their farm. So to bring in some eggs or produce or something that's been grown in a neighboring community or a nearby community and sell it at their farm stand. Currently, there's a regulation. That's a regulation that TPZ created, and so TPZ would have to make a change to it. Board of Selectmen just waived the fee. We had the power to do that. The second request from Agricultural Commission was regarding extension of the 5-year or extension of the 1-year leases for farming town-owned property. There's a series of parcels. Once a year, we give out a 1-year lease. That's been traditionally how it's been done. Agricultural Commission has looked into this and thought there's an opportunity for some of these leaseholders to be able to apply for grant funds, but they have to show a 5-year lease to do that or ownership of the land, obviously. unfortunately, this has been looked at, and it's sort of come to the attention of the Board of Selectmen now that there's something in our charter that prevents the Board of Selectmen from extending leases beyond 1 year. So we discussed it at the meeting. We did sort of come up with an alternative way to proceed because someone is trying to get some funding pretty quickly. And what we're going to do is explore whether the town can apply for the grant. So it would be in the town's name, but the person who's leasing would be running the program. She's trying to eradicate, I think, some invasive species on the land she's farming. So that was the other thing that we did that night. And then lastly, well, there are two parts to the former country club property. So the Board of Selectmen has authorized the first selectman to go forward to discuss with Arbor Haven what their proposal is and to sort of bring that back. As you know, the Arbor Haven proposal went around to all different boards and commissions. We've heard some feedback from different boards and commissions, but we haven't heard back from Arbor Haven. So we voted at our last meeting to go ahead and kind of close this loop, find out what Arbor Haven is actually proposing now that they've gotten all sorts of input. And Tim, I'm thinking specifically of the Conservation Commission had sent a written recommendation. I believe that Economic Development had one. And of course, Cupop had also asked that there be a pause until housing information was available. So what we've simply decided to do is to authorize the first selectman to find out more information, bring that back to the Board of Selectmen. We did not take action to send it to voters. We don't know what we would be sending to voters. So this is just moving this process forward, but no decisions have been made yet. And then related to that, there was a proposal from the Land Trust and the Parks Association to purchase a conservation restriction on the entire property or the bulk of the property. And that Board of Selectmen did reject that. Just simply because the amount of money that was being offered in comparison to some of the other possibilities out there, it didn't seem appropriate to take these possibilities off the table at this point in time. That's not to say that there won't be future consideration of conservation efforts or anything else on this property. And again, it also doesn't commit anyone to the Arbor Haven proposal until we hear more about what that proposal would be. So those are the actions that were taken by the Board of Selectmen, and I just thought I would especially touch base with Cupop because I know you all had expressed concern, and I had brought that back to the Selectmen regarding aligning up with the housing report that is due to come. I think I understand the timing of housing is that the state requires us to have our affordable housing plan with them June 1, so that especially if we're going to have any kind of public hearing at the Board of Selectmen level, we're going to be hearing probably before May 1st, hopefully before May 1st, the recommendations from that study committee, although I'm not sure of the timing on that. And maybe Nicole, you know more about the timing. So still very eager to hear about that. I think it's going to help us understand what to do with any property in town, not just the the former country club, but any other parcels that might be involved. So that's
Great.
it from me.
Thank you, Sheila.
You're welcome. Do you guys
I
have questions or?
Question? Just one question. Sheila, regarding the, well, Tim, you could probably also answer this. The proposal for the Merritt Avenue, properties, is that in any way, eligible to satisfy affordable housing requests? I'm not sure exactly what type of housing,
Yeah, so the Board of Selectmen actually has absolutely nothing to do with that proposal. So it will go, right now it's already gone through inland wetland, but it would have to go through TPZ if they're going to continue. Part of the parcel has already been approved and is being built. So if you go down there, you're going to see that there's already foundations and whatnot being poured or site work being done. But the rest of it would have to go through TPZ. And I think at that point they would weigh in about affordable or not. Is that your understanding too, Tim?
It is. I just add, well, that I would think that at that point it goes to TPZ, that any affordable housing regulations that are already on the books would be enforced.
Yeah, the TPZ regulations regarding affordable, yes.
So, and so I haven't looked at the regulations and see how they applied to this particular subdivision, but I overheard someone, if you want to take a third person hearsay, saying that there would be or three units of affordable housing at the end
Up
of
to
the day. If the
27 or
whole
28.
proposal goes through and it does get built and et cetera. So using apparently the math that they found in the regulations applied to this.
Thank you.
So the two or three, I think, depended on whether it's rounded up or down. That type of thing. It was a
It's a percentage of the number of units,
Yes.
right?
yes.
Yeah. Probably 10% then, right?
I am.
0.8.
It could be 15 and maybe it's 3 and 4 and I may have messed the numbers, but so I think the basic answer is yes, there probably will be affordable housing, but according to what the regulations are.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm going to jump in. I do have information about timeline, Sheila, so I will jump in there in a minute. I just wanted to take us back to in December, David Fink from Scrog came and presented, actually didn't come to Woodbridge, he had to do it over Zoom, and presented his affordable housing presentation to the town. We did have numerous people that were on and did ask questions, did pose some concerns to the committee. People did submit letters to us as well that we are taking into consideration. So I think overall we did have great participation for this meeting with David Fink. If anyone missed the presentation, there is a link of the actual presentation that was recorded, and it is on the town website for it to be reviewed. Does anybody have questions about that? And I think Sheila, you saw the presentation with the Board of Selectmen when it was a group, when it was a joint.
Yeah, I also watched the YouTube of the more recent one. It was great.
Good. Great.
Yeah.
So I think it was very informative, and I think it hopefully define affordable housing for those who perhaps have misconceptions of what it actually is. So that's our goal, is to continue to educate as to what affordable housing really means. And in terms of update for the timeline, make sure I get this right. I actually talked to Chris Sullivan today to make sure that my timeline was accurate. The second survey is on its way, and it should be live by, I want to say, the middle of February at the latest. Now, this is very important because, as some of you may have seen, the first survey, we did have a lot of feedback indicating that that survey really did not apply to Woodbridge and it wasn't very town specific. So, taking all of the feedback that we did receive, we felt it was very important to have a survey that really would reflect the needs and wants of the Woodbridge residents. So that has it's in the process of being edited right now. Actually, I did receive a copy of a first draft today. So we are hoping that our deadlines are as follows. I know that February 11th is the deadlines for various things like the town newsletter and the email with Betsy. So our goal is to have all of the information pertaining to the survey in all of those um, the social media, those media outlets, so that people have all the information they need, just like last time. It's going to be online. We're going to provide the link. It will be posted all over social media. It will be in the newspaper. Hard copies will be available at the senior center, the library, and the town hall. So it'll just be like it was for the first survey. We have a joint meeting. By we, I mean the Housing Committee has a joint meeting with TPZ and SCROG on February 17th, where we are going to be discussing what this report will look like and start talking about information that has been gathered thus far. We anticipate, and I say anticipate, and this is what we're sticking to, Sheila, is the first draft of the report to be ready in April, as you indicated. So we're hoping to have a report to the Board of Selectmen our final draft anyway, of the committee to the board so that they may discuss in May, have the, any town meetings in May, because as you indicated, June 1st is the deadline for the report. So we need to make sure that we complete it by then. Let's see. And that's it about housing in a nutshell. That's our those are our important dates. Does anybody have any questions about housing? Okay. And then in-person meeting is on my list here. So far, and Sheila, you probably may know more than me, but there's been no indication that we will be meeting in person anytime soon, as far as I know. Sheila, do you have any other additional information? My guess is that's accurate, right?
Yes, that's as far as I know. Yeah.
Okay. Um, and so no news on that. As soon as I hear anything, I'll let everybody know. I'd love to see everybody in person one of these days. It's been forever. And then my final issue that's on my list or bullet point is the littering statute. As I had said at the last meeting, I would send an email to Beth with the request or the concerns, I should say, of the committee and brought them to her attention. And I know, Sheila, she did speak with you. She indicated, she explained to me that the email was forwarded to you, Sheila, because you are the chairperson of the ordinance committee, right? And as well as town council. So we do have to follow the procedure in terms of whether or not an ordinance will be enacted regarding littering. Now, I did bring up at the last meeting, and I know that Sheila's more than aware of this. I know, as we indicated, there is a state statute. So the issue is whether or not the town wishes to enact an ordinance. Sheila, I know you mentioned previously during your comments that you may have more information about that, or maybe not. Did I hear things? Do you want anything to say about that?
Yeah, so I did bring back in so the liaison role here is both to tell you what's going on at Board of Selectmen, but then to take your concerns back to the Board of Selectmen. So that's the point at which I shared with them that there was interest in this, but there was some question about how the current state statute is both applicable but also being enforced. So I thought I understood from you all, especially you, Leslie, that in contacting the police, they had expressed that there was some sort of like limitation to what they could do unless we had a town ordinance. So I think that again, what happens on ordinance typically is that we have to figure out if we're making a new law, how can we afford to allocate the resources to enforce it? Because if it's not enforced, it's almost like not having it. It's almost worse than having it and not enforcing it, right? So the enforcement piece of it is going to be, kind of the key here. If there's enforcement action that can be taken on existing state statute, then that's the first line of defense, right? But if it turns out that it can't be, then that's the need for an ordinance. But kind of before you go through all the ordinance, it would seem appropriate maybe to have a complete understanding of what the limitation is at the state statute that you'd be trying to enhance or correct with an ordinance. So I didn't know if that would be something that, Cupop seems to have their hands on what the concern is. I don't know if that's something that you would present to the Board of Selectmen. It can't go to ordinance until we vote at a meeting to send it to ordinance, is my understanding of it. So if you did want to proceed, you would come to the Board of Selectmen, get on the agenda and make a pitch to us one way or the other, I think.
Sheila, on the other side of the coin, I did research and spoke extensively with the gentleman who is in charge of, let's put it that way, using that term loosely, of the ordinance in our neighboring town in Derby. And I had mentioned that I happened to notice a sign on the Derby Turnpike just before you come to the Big Y about littering, and there was a fine for it. So he had explained to me that the state littering ordinance would require the local police or whomever was designated to actually enforce it, that it wouldn't be like a state trooper coming down and arresting you, and that it would be their responsibility anyway. So the burden is still there, at least in Derby, because they do have an ordinance. The other thing is, in terms of cost, well, the fine that would be imposed upon someone might help to offset that as well. So he was very specific about their ordinance. I have a copy of it. I think I sent it to you, Nicole, didn't I? I'm pretty sure I did.
I have the ordinances, yes.
From Derby. Yeah.
I think I do,
Um,
yes, I do. Mhm.
okay. And it's pretty specific. But at any rate, to answer those two issues, or at least to circumvent undue burden on our police, it's already being done in towns that have an ordinance where they are asking the local police to enforce it. It's just something that, even driving down, again, I'm using our example not to say, oh, I want this for me. It's for the town, but just as an example, I drove down our street today, and there is, a definite area that I've told neighbors. I actually handed them little flyers and said, I'm the garbage girl of Greenway Road. I'll do so much. But today, in driving down, there was this huge box thrown with beer cans and cans of, well, who was going to pick it up and who was going to enforce any? So of course I picked it up. It's in the recycle bin right now. But I think that just targeting some of the main roads would not be a bad idea, especially in lieu of the outcome of COVID, etc. I didn't really want to touch that stuff, but I did. And I think it would help, though. I asked the gentleman also in Derby if what success they had with it, and he really felt that the main streets, and I mean Derby's a little tiny town, but the main streets that they did cover, they had actually enforced the law. So it can be done, and the fines can reflect some of to offset some of the cost.
I think if I may interject here, I think the issue is, as the statutes right now, I don't have it in front of me, but I did read what Leslie sent me, and I also am familiar with the state statute. As it's written in the Connecticut General Statutes, um, any littering that occurs at the moment within the town of Woodbridge, it would be the police department's responsibility to ticket whomever littered. That is the enforcement agency that's utilized for that.
So
Um,
I guess I don't understand what changes if we have an ordinance.
right. So I think what I think Sheila's saying is that in order for us to successfully, maybe it's not the case, but in order to solidify a successful argument with the Board of Selectmen, we would have to show, like you said, speaking to Derby, what would change if we had a littering statute. In other words, right now it indicates that if someone litters, this is the fine. I want the one thing I would say, Sheila, that perhaps may be a good argument for it is that, and I have to double check this, so please don't take what I'm saying is 100% accurate. But my recall of the statute is that I think the fines, it may involve a percentage of fines that perhaps the town does not get 100% of the fines, but only a percentage. But I have to double check. There was something with the fines, so I will look into that. That may be what would change, right? We would get all of the fines for the littering, but again, I have to double check that, Sheila. But I hear what you're saying. We'd have to see something that's what would change if we had a littering ordinance versus just following the Connecticut General Statute.
Yeah, I was going to suggest the argument about the fines, and we could set our own fines where the state has specific numbers. And again, that's up to whomever approves this, but I do think it's something that if we took seriously, and easily enough, because we're all out and about, we could possibly collect enough fines so that people might stop, or at least be discouraged from doing this.
Yeah.
I'm
I
looking.
think an anti-littering campaign is a really good method of changing behaviors. I've lived on a main road here, Center Road, for 23 years, and I pick up trash all the time. I have never once seen the car that has thrown it out the window so that I could write down their license plate and do something about it. Never once. So I don't know how. I mean, we could create this law, but then unless someone is caught in the act of dumping, how are we even enforcing? How are we even asking police to ticket for it? But I I I completely understand what you're talking about. I've experienced a lot of this litter, and I think it is a shame that people are throwing things out of their cars, and it's primarily coming out of cars. Maybe an anti-littering campaign, like a promotional campaign, that we remind people that first of all, it's illegal. Second of all, it's why are you doing this to our town? Try to change behaviors in those ways. Um, because short of identifying who's actually doing this littering, I think that's going to be quite difficult,
We
regardless of what the fine is if they're caught.
we actually have caught people, and actually one of the culprits was our backdoor neighbor's son. Decided before he got home he would get rid of his disgusting things that he had, including cigarette containers, nips, bottles. What else did he do? All
So,
kinds
but
of.
Leslie, if you have that information and bring it to the police, are they not able to do anything? Is that what you're saying?
They were reluctant because there were no ordinances, and at that time, to be very
Mhm.
honest with you, this has been probably less than a year, but I wasn't aware that there was a state statute. I might have tried to pursue something. And by the way, they sold their house. Yay, they're gone. But other people though that we have seen, I short of being a spy, and I'm not going to be, but um, I think at least we have more of a case if our town, even for a campaign, we're going on what the state ordinance. Well, why can't Woodbridge have an ordinance? I mean, Derby does, and there he's very satisfied with the results. And also offered to be consulted if need be. So
So why
um,
don't we,
If I may jump in, it's not only occurring on main roads, state roads, it's
Mhm.
also occurring on cul-de-sacs, dead ends.
mhm,
Because, what I found is that sometimes when you have the workers or the people that are mowing the lawn or uh, carpenters or whatnot that come to somebody's house, usually they're the ones that
mhm.
are throwing things onto the side of the road. So yes, there's cars that go through town that also are doing this, that don't live in town, they don't care. And so it's an issue, it's a problem. And I think Sheila's right. We have to change behaviors. How do we change behaviors? We can start a campaign here in town, but how do we impact the people that live out of town? How do we change their behaviors?
yeah,
Well, the
and I
infractions
think
occur
too,
here.
I'm sorry, I just want to interrupt for a second. I did look up the statute and I was accurate that maybe one motivating factor would be that as currently written, if a littering ticket is given in the town of Woodbridge and a fine is collected, we're only given 50% and the other 50% goes to the state. Whereas if you had a littering ordinance, 100% goes to the town. So
Right.
that may be a motivating factor, but I hear what you're saying, Sheila. It is hard um, to monitor, catch somebody in the act, right, of the littering. I think perhaps a combination of the littering campaign and perhaps discussing the fact that one major thing that would change is that the entire fine would go to the town of Woodbridge, number one. And number two, I think it's unfortunate that perhaps we can write or somebody or speak to Frank Cappiello that the statute's very clear that they do have the authority to write a ticket for a littering. So I'm unsure as to why Leslie would hold that, but perhaps something in writing from perhaps the board of selectmen or whomever could address
Or
that.
even just a discussion with them, you
Right,
know?
right, or a
Yeah,
phone call, just something.
yeah.
indicating that you do have the authority to do so under Connecticut General Statute. Ordinance is not needed. However, as you indicated, Sheila, what would be the difference would probably be right off the bat, off the top of my head, is the money issue. So we can leave the littering on
Yeah.
as a line item for later. I mean, we're getting on in time at 6:15.
The one thing I would say to you though, so when new ordinances are being considered, there is a cost to have a new ordinance, right? We have to put it in the newspaper, we have to advertise it. So it's not any money we bring in for littering first has to pay for the law itself, actually.
Right,
So,
right.
I don't,
How
I
much
don't know.
is that law, by the way? Do we know?
How much is what?
How much would that ordinance cost us?
I don't know. Jerry Shaw could probably give us an estimate because she has to
Okay.
place those ads and they have to go in the New Haven Register and they have to
Mhm.
go in advance of a public hearing and then they have to, I think,
Yeah.
go again when they're done.
And that,
But if you want to talk to the police commission, that's another avenue for you.
Yeah,
and that's a one-time ad
yes.
or whatever. Okay, so then if the ordinance maintained itself over a period of years, we wouldn't have that cost each year. The other thing too is the signage issue. And you know, I'm big on signage, but the signage issue is something that made me aware of the fact that Derby had that ordinance. I think it might serve as I mean, yeah, of course I've seen garbage around those signs, but it might at least make people aware of the fact that yeah, Woodbridge does have an ordinance. You know,
What does Bethany do? Because Bethany is a town more similar to, you know, Derby is a much more denser populated town. So it's not, you know, a comparison that's exactly like Woodbridge. So I'm just curious to see what a quieter.
What about Orange? Well, I think it's good
Well,
to kind
even
of,
Orange is more populated.
Yeah.
I'm curious about a town similar to Woodbridge, you know, Bethany, for example. Do they have one in place or do they just do
I
what
don't
we're
know.
doing now? Probably what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, we could keep this on our agenda for our next meeting, and we can look into those questions, Patty, and see what it is that Bethany is doing in Orange, like you said, Laura. And perhaps by next meeting, a phone call to the police commissioner or whatever may have occurred, and we can have that discussion and update them regarding the ordinance. Okay. All right. Laura, I think you are up. Hello, Happy New Year. You were not.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Mhm.
I haven't attended the last two meetings of diversity. One was a special meeting, and I think it was like on the 23rd of December, and I just had too much going on, so I wasn't able to attend. And the other one was last week, and I wasn't around. So, but basically, we did have a meeting on December 22nd. That was a special meeting, and the guest was Reverend Antona Smith, and she's giving us some valuable um, information to the committee, and then we had an opening circle, and Ms. Scalatar read an excerpt from Deacon King Kong by James McBride, and there's information. The committee is trying to reaffirm its decision to begin its book talk series with the 1619 project, and they agreed on a goal of having the first book talk in late February, ideally on a Tuesday or Thursday. So that will be determined. The committee also discussed next books and next dates for the book talk. And Mr. Lawrence gave an overview of the draft survey. And so they were looking to do a survey. And that's it. That's it. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Like a lot of
It's a lot of good stuff.
Good stuff going on.
Things
Great.
are coming together. So it's
Great.
really great. Yeah.
All right, and then we have the Grove update. Patty, are there any updates regarding the Grove?
Just a quick one. I did reach out to an acoustical consultant that I work with a lot and talked about the property and the site and just got some high level input from him. And I'm combining that with a little report to show Betsy when I get it done. It's kind of a work in progress.
Great, fantastic.
Coming
Thank you.
along.
Pat. Great, I'm excited for that too. Leslie, is there a dog park update?
Yeah, on January 19th, I received a letter from Bonnie Blake. And apparently, she and the other board members have all retired.
Mhm.
And she's quite happy though that at the time, I guess last year, they were devastated because of I was gonna say Coupon, COVID, and the fact that there weren't a whole lot of people to volunteer to run the dog park. But apparently, 30 people signed up, and about half of them were willing to be on the board itself. So now there are 11 new directors, including 4 new officers. And just briefly, she's very happy with all the progress they've made in succeeding in the goals that they had. And the good news too is that we have a new liaison, Jeanette Glixman, who has stepped up to keep us abreast of the dog park events and progress. And hopefully next meeting, she will be able to introduce herself and tell us what's going on a monthly basis.
Great, thank you, Leslie.
Okay.
We will put that on the agenda for next month. And I would love to go back to the minutes now that we have quorum and vote on October. Now, we didn't have quorum when we voted on the October minutes. So now, do we still have quorum, Tony?
Yes, we do. It's Laura, Leslie, yourself, and Patty. So we have 4 in attendance.
Great.
Todd's here. Hello, Todd. I don't think Todd's here. He signed in, but he's
Not
maybe
on the meeting.
connected. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we need to vote again on the adoption of the October minutes. Would anybody like to make the motion?
I'll make it.
Anyone second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So
Tony, you want us to go through the roll call? So you know who
please,
voted?
yes.
You want to do it?
Okay, so was it Nicole said
Yes,
yes? Leslie, Patty, and
Yes. Yeah.
Laura?
Mhm.
perfect. It's
Okay.
unanimous.
Great. And again, with the November minutes, if someone would like to move to adopt those.
I'll do that.
And
I'll
I
make-
apologize, was there any discussion regarding the minutes? Any additions or deletions or anything? Okay. Anyone want to second that?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye, Laura.
Nicole, aye. And Patty was an aye, and so was Leslie.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you.
All right. So the next meeting is on February 28th. Probably will
Okay.
not be in person, but let's keep our fingers crossed and see if anything changes. And I'll keep you posted.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, guys. Sounds like there's a lot of fun things going on in town. So let's keep up the momentum and get out of this funk of COVID. So,
Yeah.
okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Great. Stay healthy and safe, everybody. Okay.
All right.
We're adjourning, right?
Oh, yes. Sorry. Bye.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Okay.
adjourn.
Thank you.
All
Good night.
right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye,
bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.